Mr. President, I rise today to seek unanimous consent for my Stable Trade Policy Act with Senator Kaine, an act that would prevent any president from imposing tariffs on a U.S. ally or free trade agreement partner without congressional consent. And I'll make that motion in just a moment. But let me first just explain what this is and why I'm doing it. Next week, President Trump has announced plans to impose 25% tariffs on products coming into the United States from Mexico and Canada, our #1 and #2 trading partners. These tariffs will be disastrous for our economy and our national security. These tariffs will cost the average American household about $1,200 a year. They'll raise costs for avocados and appliances, diesel fuel and dog toys, car parts and Christmas tree lights, tomatoes and tequila. I could go on. Our economies are so closely integrated, the United States, Canada, and Mexico, that it'll increase the cost of a GM pickup truck about $10,000. And even if these tariffs at the last minute are delayed, businesses are hurt by the uncertainty, which continues to increase costs. President Trump plans to follow those tariffs with reciprocal tariffs on the EU, which includes many of our critical NATO allies and closest partners. Imposing tariffs on our allies and partners diminishes our standing in the world and makes our neighbors less likely to help us in the future. It's no surprise that Americans think this is a terrible idea. Barely a quarter of Americans think imposing tariffs on Canada are a good idea. More than double that disapprove. President Trump has already declared an economic emergency to justify imposing these tariffs on Mexico and Canada, but my bill with Senator Kaine would prevent him from abusing long-established national security authorities to follow through on further tariff threats against our allies and FTA partners. The U.S. Constitution in the Commerce Clause, Article 1, Section 8, gives Congress jurisdiction over trade policy. And it's time that we took ownership back of controlling the ability to impose tariffs willy-nilly on our trusted partners and allies by passing this bill and reining in President Trump's costly and damaging idea. And so, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on Finance be discharged from further consideration of Senate Bill 348 and the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration, that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be made and laid upon the table. Mr. President, I understand that Senator Crapo, the chairman of the Finance Committee, a supporter of President Trump, has blocked this bill today. And I hope to find ways to work with him on improving market access and on elevating the quality and the capabilities of U.S. trade engagement with our partners. But I really don't understand why President Trump seems so intent on harming one of his signature accomplishments, the USMCA. I'm disappointed because Congress gave the president authority to impose tariffs in the event of a national security crisis. Congress did not grant this power to pursue petty grudges against trusted neighbors. Honestly, how can anyone be angry at Canadians? They are the nicest people in the world. And yet here they are working with us, pleading with us to not impose ruinous tariffs that would harm their economy and ours. I'll briefly then just make again a few simple points. I'm disappointed that President Trump isn't doing more to reduce costs. He was elected in no small part because of high inflation and promised it would come down on day one. These tariffs, if imposed, will make inflation worse and hit the lowest income Americans the hardest. It will impact American business, American families, and American communities. So I hope that working together with my friends and colleagues here in the Senate, we can find ways to lower costs on pharmaceuticals and automobiles and microchips, but imposing reciprocal tariffs on trusted friends and allies and sparking tariff wars in our region and around the world is not the way to do that. 2/3 of Americans already think that President Trump isn't doing enough to lower costs. Blocking this bill will only accelerate that if President Trump continues to act unwisely and bully and threaten our closest and most trusted partners. We must find a better way forward together. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor and suggest the absence of a quorum.